Jacob Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood under the twin suns of Zeta 7. The heat was relentless, but it didn't bother him much anymore. He had spent most of his life farming on this remote planet at the edge of the galaxy. His crops were simple, wheat-like grains and vegetables that grew well in the dry soil, but they kept him and his wife Emily alive. Life wasn't easy here, but it was peaceful, or at least it used to be. Emily was inside their small home preparing lunch. She hummed softly while chopping vegetables, her hands moving with practiced ease. Her blonde hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and she wore an old apron stained with dirt from earlier chores. She glanced out the window occasionally, watching Jacob work in the fields. They had been married for 10 years, and though they didn't have children, their bond was strong. Together they had built a quiet, happy life despite the harsh conditions of their world. But lately, things had changed. News from other parts of the galaxy trickled in slowly, carried by traders or travelers brave enough to venture this far. The Galactic Empire, which ruled over countless planets and billions of people, had grown more aggressive. Taxes were rising, resources were being stripped away, and anyone who dared question the Empire's authority faced swift punishment. Even on Zeta 7, where few paid attention to politics, rumors of rebellion began to spread. Jacob and Emily weren't rebels, at least not openly, but they couldn't ignore the suffering they saw around them. Neighbors struggled to feed their families as food supplies dwindled. Friends disappeared after speaking out against imperial policies. It was hard to stay silent when so many were hurting, so quietly and carefully, they started helping those in need. At first it was small acts, sharing extra food, offering shelter, to strangers passing through. Then, it became something bigger. One night, months ago, a man named Daniel arrived at their door. He was thin, tired, and clearly frightened. "I need your help," he said simply. "The Empire is hunting me." Jacob hesitated, but Emily stepped forward without hesitation. "Come in," she said firmly. Over dinner, Daniel explained that he was part of a growing resistance movement fighting against the Empire. They needed safe houses, supplies, and information. Jacob and Emily agreed to help, knowing full well the risks involved. From that day on, their lives changed forever. Messages came encrypted on data chips, hidden in cargo shipments. Supplies meant for their farm sometimes went missing, redirected to rebel camps. And then there were the meetings, secret gatherings held deep in the woods where plans were made and strategies discussed. Jacob and Emily never sought glory. They just wanted to do what was right. But the Empire had eyes everywhere, and keeping secrets was becoming harder. It all came crashing down one evening when the sky turned orange with the setting suns. Jacob was outside, stacking tools near the barn, when he heard the unmistakable hum of engines. Ships descended rapidly, kicking up clouds of dust. Before he could react, soldiers poured out, clad in black armor emblazoned with the Empire's emblem, a golden star surrounded by rings. Their leader, a tall man with cold blue eyes, approached him. "Jacob Carter?" the man asked, his voice sharp and commanding. Jacob nodded slowly, trying to keep his expression neutral. "You're under arrest for treason," the officer announced, gesturing for his men to seize him. Emily rushed out of the house, her face pale with shock. "What's going on?" she demanded, stepping between Jacob and the soldiers. One of them shoved her aside roughly, causing her to stumble. "Stay out of this, ma'am," the leader warned, "unless you want to join him." Emily glared at him but stayed silent, clutching her arms tightly across her chest. The soldiers dragged Jacob toward one of the ships, binding his wrists with energy cuffs. As they passed Emily, Jacob gave her a reassuring look. "It'll be okay," he mouthed, though neither of them believed it. The arrest sent shock waves through the community. Neighbors gathered outside the Carters' home, whispering nervously about what had happened. No one dared intervene. The Empire's reputation for brutality was well known. But anger simmered beneath the surface. That night, Imperial broadcasts confirmed the worst fears. Jacob and Emily Carter had been accused of aiding the rebellion, Evidence included intercepted communications and witness testimonies. The Empire promised swift justice, vowing to make an example of them. 2 days later, the trial began. It was broadcast live across the galaxy, ensuring maximum exposure. Jacob and Emily sat side by side in a sterile courtroom flanked by guards. Cameras hovered overhead, capturing every detail. High Inquisitor Marcus Cole presided over the proceedings, his stern face magnified on screens for billions to see. He wasted no time delivering the charges. "Jacob and Emily Carter," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand accused of conspiring against the Galactic Empire. Your actions have endangered countless lives and undermined the stability of our society. How do you plead?" Jacob leaned forward slightly, meeting Cole's gaze without flinching. "Not guilty," he replied evenly. Emily echoed his words, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. The prosecutor presented evidence next, listing intercepted messages and alleged connections to known rebels. Each accusation painted a damning picture, leaving little room for doubt. When it was their turn to speak, Jacob took a deep breath. He knew this might be his only chance to address the galaxy directly. "We may be guilty of wanting a better future," he began, his tone calm yet firm. "A future where people aren't oppressed, where they can live freely without fear. If that makes us criminals, then so be it. But know this: the Empire cannot silence hope. You can take our lives, but you cannot extinguish the truth." His words resonated deeply, sparking murmurs among viewers. Some felt inspired, others dismissed it as naive idealism. When Emily spoke next, her voice trembled slightly, but her message was clear. "Love and freedom are worth fighting for," she said. "No matter how dark things seem, remember that we are stronger together. Don't let them break your spirit." The verdict came quickly, guilty on all counts. The sentence, public execution via disintegration beam, scheduled to occur within hours. The Empire intended to crush any remaining defiance by making an example of the couple. Yet even as the cameras cut away from the courtroom, something unexpected happened. Viewers couldn't stop talking about Jacob and Emily's courage. Across the galaxy, conversations shifted. People who had once accepted the Empire's rule now questioned its morality. Seeds of rebellion were planted, watered by the couple's final act of defiance. Back on Zeta 7, the atmosphere was somber. Friends and neighbors gathered in silence, watching the live transmission on makeshift screens. Tears flowed freely, but so did determination. For the first time in years, people dared to imagine a different future, one free from tyranny. And as the clock ticked closer to midnight, anticipation hung heavy in the air. Whatever happened next, everyone knew one thing. For certain, Jacob and Emily Carter would never be forgotten. The hours leading up to the execution felt like an eternity. Jacob and Emily Carter sat in a cold, dimly lit holding cell deep within the Imperial Palace. The room was bare except for a metal bench bolted to the wall and a single flickering light overhead. Guards stood outside the heavy door, their boots clicking against the floor as they shifted positions. Despite the grim circumstances, Jacob and Emily held onto each other tightly, drawing strength from their shared resolve. Emily rested her head on Jacob's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think anyone will remember us?" she asked, her blue eyes glistening with unshed tears. Jacob squeezed her hand gently, his own heart heavy but resolute. "They'll remember," he said firmly. "Not because of who we are, but because of what we stand for. People won't forget that love and freedom matter more than fear." Jacob's words brought a small measure of comfort, but the reality of their situation loomed large. The Empire had made it clear their deaths would serve as a warning to anyone who dared challenge its authority. Public executions were rare these days, reserved only for those deemed the greatest threats. By choosing to broadcast this event live, the Empire hoped to crush any lingering dissent. But Jacob and Emily knew better. They understood that their sacrifice could inspire others to rise up, even if they couldn't see it themselves. As midnight approached, the guards returned to escort them to the execution platform. The journey through the palace halls was surreal. Everywhere they looked, opulence surrounded them. Gleaming marble floors, golden statues, and intricate murals depicting the Empire's supposed greatness. It was a stark contrast to the poverty and suffering endured by so many under its rule. Jacob clenched his fists, biting back the urge to say something defiant. Now wasn't the time. The platform awaited them in the heart of the capital city, illuminated by massive holoprojectors that cast their faces across the sky. Thousands of people had gathered below, forced to watch as a reminder of the Empire's power. Soldiers lined the perimeter, weapons at the ready, while drones hovered overhead to capture every angle for the live transmission. High Inquisitor, Marcus Cole, stood nearby, his expression unreadably stern as he oversaw the final preparations. Jacob and Emily climbed the steps together, their movements slow but deliberate. Chains rattled softly around their wrists, a cruel symbol of their captivity. As they reached the top, they paused for a moment, taking in the scene before them. The crowd was eerily silent, save for the occasional sob or murmur. Above them, towering screens displayed their faces, magnified to impossible proportions. For a brief second, Jacob caught his reflection and smiled faintly. If nothing else, he thought, they wouldn't go quietly. Cole stepped forward, addressing both the live audience and the billions watching across the galaxy. His voice carried a chilling authority, echoing through the square. "Citizens of the Galactic Empire," he began, his tone dripping with disdain. "Today we witnessed justice served. These individuals, Jacob and Emily Carter, have betrayed our great society. Their crimes are unforgivable. Let this act remind you all of the consequences of defiance." The crowd remained silent, though tension crackled in the air. Some lowered their heads, unable to meet the gaze of the condemned couple. Others stared defiantly at the platform, their faces masks of suppressed anger. Among them were rebels, cloaked in plain clothes, silently vowing to honor Jacob and Emily's memory. Hidden in the shadows, Daniel, the man who had first sought refuge with the Carters, watched with clenched fists, vowing to continue the fight. When it was their turn to speak, Jacob took a step forward, his chains clinking softly. He scanned the crowd, meeting as many eyes as possible. Then, turning toward the cameras, he spoke clearly, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "To everyone watching," he began, "don't let them win. Don't let fear control you. We may be standing here today, but our hope lives on in all of you. Stand together. Fight for a better future." His words resonated deeply, sparking ripples of emotion among viewers. On distant planets, families huddled around screens, feeling a mix of sorrow and determination. In cramped apartments, workers whispered to one another about resisting oppression. Even Imperial loyalists found themselves uneasy, questioning whether such brutality truly represented justice. The Empire's message of dominance was beginning to falter, replaced by a growing sense of unrest. Emily followed Jacob's speech with one of her own, her voice trembling slightly, but filled with conviction. "Love is stronger than hate," she said, glancing at Jacob before addressing the cameras. "Freedom is worth fighting for. No matter how dark things seem, never lose faith in yourselves or each other. Together, we can overcome anything." Her words struck a chord, especially among women and young people who saw her as a symbol of quiet courage. Across the galaxy, whispers of rebellion grew louder. High Inquisitor Cole watched the couple intently, his jaw tightening with irritation. He hadn't anticipated their speeches having such an impact. To him, they were criminals deserving of punishment, not martyrs capable of inspiring change. Yet even he couldn't deny the effect their words were having. Viewership numbers soared, as more people tuned in, drawn not by morbid curiosity but by the couple's unwavering bravery. Finally, the moment arrived. Cole signaled for the guards to position Jacob and Emily beneath the disintegration beam, a sleek device designed to erase living matter instantly. The machine hummed ominously, casting a pale blue glow over the platform. Jacob and Emily exchanged a final glance, their expressions calm despite the inevitability of their fate. I love you, Emily murmured, her voice breaking ever so slightly. I love you too, Jacob replied, squeezing her hand one last time. Cole raised his hand, signaling the operator to activate the beam. May this serve as a lesson to all, he announced coldly, his voice cutting through the tense silence. With a deafening whir, the disintegration beam fired. A blinding flash engulfed the couple, and in an instant they were gone. Not a trace remained, not even ash. The crowd gasped collectively, some covering their mouths in horror while others wept openly. The Empire had delivered its message, but something unexpected lingered in the air, a sense of defiance. For the next 47 minutes, the live transmission continued, showing the empty platform and the somber reactions of the crowd. Officials expected shock and submission, but instead murmurs of discontent spread rapidly. Social media platforms erupted with messages of outrage and solidarity. Hashtags like Myux Remember Jacob and Emily trended galaxy-wide, accompanied by images of candles being lit and protests forming in secret. The Empire's attempt to instill fear had backfired spectacularly. On Zeta 7, the Carters' neighbors gathered outside their home once again, this time lighting lanterns in their honor. Rachel Monroe, a former journalist turned activist, addressed the group, her voice filled with determination. Jacob and Emily gave everything for us, she said, holding up a glowing lantern. We owe it to them to keep fighting. Let's make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, cracks began forming within the Empire itself. Communication systems started failing, leaving officials scrambling to maintain control. Reports poured in of entire fleets disappearing without explanation, plunging regions into chaos. Panic rippled through the ranks as rumors of sabotage and betrayal spread. What had begun as a demonstration of strength quickly unraveled into disorder. Back in the capital city, Cole stood alone on the now empty platform, staring at the spot where Jacob and Emily had vanished. For the first time in years, doubt crept into his mind. Had the Empire gone too far? Was this really justice, or merely cruelty masquerading as order? Before he could dwell on these thoughts further, alarms blared throughout the palace. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. 47 minutes after the execution, the unthinkable happened. The Empire's central command hub collapsed, severing ties between planets and military forces. Entire sectors declared independence overnight, rejecting imperial rule. Rebels seized key locations, emboldened by the sudden power vacuum. Within hours, the once mighty Galactic Empire lay in ruins, its downfall triggered by the very act meant to solidify its dominance. Though Jacob and Emily Carter were gone, their legacy lived on. Their final moments had ignited a spark that refused to be extinguished, a flame of hope and resistance that would guide the galaxy toward a brighter future. And as the dust settled, one truth became undeniable. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage can change the course of history. The execution of Jacob and Emily Carter was supposed to be the end of the story. The Empire had planned it that way, a grand public display meant to crush any trace of dissent. But as the minutes ticked by after their deaths, something strange began to happen. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a crack forming in a dam before the floodwaters burst through. At first, people noticed glitches in the live broadcast. The towering screens displaying the empty execution platform flickered erratically, showing static instead of clear images. Some viewers dismissed it as technical difficulty, but others felt uneasy. Then came reports from across the galaxy. Communication systems were failing. Messages sent between planets disappeared without reaching their destinations. Ships traveling through hyperspace suddenly lost contact with their home bases. Entire sectors fell silent, cut off from the rest of the Empire. High, Inquisitor Marcus Cole stood frozen on the platform, staring at the chaos unfolding around him. Soldiers scrambled to fix the equipment, shouting orders over the rising hum of malfunctioning machinery. "What's happening?" Cole demanded, his voice sharp with panic. One of his aides approached hesitantly, clutching a tablet that displayed error messages instead of data. "Sir, we're losing control of the network," the aide stammered. It's like everything is shutting down." Cole clenched his fists, refusing to believe what he was hearing. The Galactic Empire prided itself on its technological superiority, its ability to monitor and regulate every aspect of life within its borders. How could this be happening? He barked commands ordering engineers to restore functionality immediately, but no one could pinpoint the source of the problem. It wasn't localized, it was everywhere. Communication hubs, military outposts, even civilian infrastructure, all of it was unraveling simultaneously. As the minutes passed, the situation grew worse. On distant planets, governors found themselves unable to communicate with Central Command. Fleets stationed near contested regions vanished from radar screens, leaving behind only empty voids where ships had once been. Planetary defense systems powered down unexpectedly, leaving worlds vulnerable to attack, or worse, rebellion. Panic spread like wildfire among Imperial officials, who realized they had no way to coordinate or respond effectively. Among the general population, reactions varied. Some celebrated openly, believing the couple's sacrifice had triggered some kind of cosmic retribution against the Empire. Others whispered about ancient prophecies or hidden rebel weapons designed to strike at the heart of tyranny. Whatever the cause, one thing was certain: the Empire's grip on the galaxy was slipping, and fast. Back on Zeta 7, the Carter's community gathered outside their home, lighting lanterns in defiance of curfew laws. Rachel Monroe addressed the crowd, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling around them. "We don't know exactly what's happening out there," she admitted, holding up a glowing lantern. "But one thing is clear: the Empire isn't invincible. Jacob and Emily showed us that courage can inspire change. Now it's our turn to act." Her words resonated deeply with those listening. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down now spoke openly about resisting Imperial rule. Farmers offered to share resources with nearby settlements struggling to survive. Traders promised to smuggle supplies to rebel groups operating in secret. Even children joined in, drawing pictures of Jacob and Emily surrounded by stars, a symbol of hope during dark times. Meanwhile, in the capital city, High Inquisitor Cole tried desperately to regain control. He ordered emergency broadcasts urging citizens to remain calm and loyal to the Empire, but few paid attention. Rumors of collapse spread faster than official statements, fueling distrust and unrest. Protesters took to the streets, chanting slogans inspired by Jacob and Emily's final speeches. "Freedom!" they shouted, waving makeshift banners. "Hope lives on." Cole watched the protests unfold from the safety of his office, his mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The execution should have silenced dissent, not sparked rebellion. He slammed his fist against the desk, shattering a glass of water. "Find out what's causing this," he roared at his subordinates. "I don't care how you do it, just fix it." But fixing it proved impossible. By the 47th minute, the exact duration of the live broadcast, the Empire's centralized authority crumbled completely. Military commanders declared autonomy for their fleets, cutting ties with Central Command. Governors announced independence for their planets, rejecting Imperial oversight. Chaos reigned as factions fought for power, while ordinary citizens seized the opportunity to rebuild their lives free from oppression. In the aftermath, stories of Jacob and Emily Carter spread like wildfire. Their faces appeared on posters, murals, and digital memorials across the galaxy. People shared tales of their bravery, turning them into symbols of resistance. Rebels adopted their names as rallying cries, vowing to honor their memory by continuing the fight for freedom. Even former Imperial loyalists grudgingly acknowledged their impact, admitting that the couple's sacrifice had exposed the Empire's fragility. On Zeta 7, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to organize the growing movement. She reached out to other communities, forging alliances based on mutual aid and shared goals. Together, they drafted a declaration of principles: justice, equality, cooperation. These ideals became the foundation for a new coalition determined to create a better future, one rooted in compassion rather than fear. As days turned into weeks, the galaxy transformed. What had once been a single oppressive regime splintered into countless independent entities. Some formed democracies, giving citizens a voice in governance for the first time. Others embraced communal living, prioritizing sustainability and cooperation over profit. Conflicts arose, of course, as different groups clashed over resources and ideologies. But amidst the turmoil, pockets of hope emerged, proof that humanity could rise above adversity when united by a common purpose. Jacob and Emily's legacy lived on not just in monuments or speeches, but in actions. Farmers planted crops knowing their harvest would feed more than just themselves. Teachers educated children about history, not just dates and battles, but lessons learned from struggles past. Artists painted murals depicting scenes of unity and resilience, reminding everyone that beauty could flourish even in broken places. And yet, questions lingered. Did Jacob and Emily's deaths truly trigger the empire's downfall, or was it merely coincidence? Historians debated endlessly, analyzing data and testimonies in search of answers. Some argued that the couple's sacrifice awakened an ancient force tied to the fabric of the universe, a metaphysical response to such profound injustice. Others pointed to hidden rebel technology, suggesting that the timing was too precise to be accidental. Still others believed it was simply the inevitable result of an unsustainable system collapsing under its own weight. Regardless of the explanation, one truth remained undeniable. Jacob and Emily Carter had changed the course of history. Through their courage and love, they reminded the galaxy of something fundamental, that even in the darkest times, light could still shine. And though they were gone, their spirit endured, guiding countless individuals toward a brighter tomorrow. Across the galaxy, people began referring to the events of those 47 minutes as the turning point. It marked not just the fall of the Galactic Empire, but the beginning of a new era, one defined not by domination, but by possibility. For the first time in generations, humanity dared to dream of a future shaped by choice rather than coercion. And so, the story of Jacob and Emily Carter continued, not as a tragic tale of loss, but as a testament to the enduring power of hope. Their names echoed through the stars, carried forward by those who refused to let fear dictate their lives. In the end, their greatest victory wasn't defeating the Empire. It was proving that love and freedom could never truly be extinguished. The galaxy was in chaos. The fall of the Galactic Empire left behind a void that no one knew how to fill. For decades, the Empire had been the backbone of order, harsh and oppressive, but still a force that held everything together. Now, without its iron grip, planets were left to fend for themselves. Some thrived, others struggled, and many descended into conflict. It was as if the entire universe had been shaken loose from its foundation. On Zeta 7, life changed quickly. The farmers, who had once paid heavy taxes to the Empire, now kept their earnings for themselves. Markets sprang up in towns and villages, bustling with activity as people traded goods and shared resources freely. Jacob and Emily Carter's home became a gathering place for the community. Neighbors came to pay their respects, leaving flowers and notes by the door. Others stayed longer, discussing plans for the future and how best to honor the couple's memory. Rachel Monroe took charge of organizing these meetings. She wasn't a leader by nature. She had spent most of her life writing articles exposing corruption, but she felt compelled to step up. "We owe it to Jacob and Emily," she told the group one evening, standing beside a lantern that cast soft light across the room. "They gave everything so we could have a chance at freedom. Let's make sure their sacrifice means something." Her words resonated deeply. People nodded in agreement, some wiping away tears. Slowly, they began to outline a vision for their planet. They agreed on simple principles: fairness, cooperation, and self-reliance. No more bowing to distant rulers or living in fear of soldiers knocking on doors. Instead, they would work together to build a society based on trust and mutual support. It wasn't easy, Arguments broke out over details and old grievances sometimes resurfaced, but the shared goal kept them moving forward. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar stories played out. Planets declared independence, forming loose alliances or going it alone entirely. Some worlds embraced democracy, holding elections for the first time in generations. Others opted for communal systems, pooling resources to ensure everyone had enough to survive. In every case, the collapse of the empire created opportunities for change, for better or worse. But not all changes were positive. Without the empire's centralized authority, power vacuums emerged. On some planets, warlords seized control, imposing their own versions of tyranny. Factions fought over territory, resources, and influence, plunging regions into violence. Refugees fled their homes, seeking safety wherever they could find it. The rebellion that had inspired so much hope also faced challenges as it tried to unite disparate groups under a single banner. Daniel, the man who had first sought refuge with Jacob and Emily, found himself at the center of this struggle. He traveled between rebel camps, rallying fighters and coordinating strategies. His experiences had hardened him. He no longer resembled the frightened fugitive who had knocked on the Carter's door months earlier. Yet even as he pushed forward, he carried their memory with him. Their courage reminded him why they were fighting, not just to overthrow the empire, but to create something better in its place. Back on Zeta 7, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to keep her community focused on rebuilding rather than revenge. She understood the temptation to lash out, especially after years of suffering under imperial rule. But she also knew that anger alone wouldn't solve anything. If we let hatred guide us, she warned during one meeting, we'll end up no better than the empire. We need to be better than them. Her message struck a chord, particularly among younger members of the community. Teenagers who had grown up hearing tales of oppression now saw a chance to shape the future. They joined committees tasked with planning schools, healthcare systems, and sustainable farming practices. Elders offered guidance, sharing wisdom passed down through generations. Together, they created something remarkable, a model for what post-imperial life could look like. Still, reminders of the past lingered. Imperial ruins dotted the landscape, abandoned buildings and broken machines serving as grim monuments to the empire's legacy. Some suggested tearing them down, erasing all traces of the regime that had caused so much pain. Others argued for preserving them as lessons, warnings against repeating history. In the end, they compromised. Certain structures were repurposed for practical use while others were left untouched as memorials. One such memorial stood near the edge of Zeta 7's capital town. It was a simple stone plaque engraved with Jacob and Emily's names, surrounded by wildflowers planted by volunteers. Every day, people stopped by to leave mementos, handwritten letters, drawings, or small tokens of gratitude. For many, it was a place of reflection, a reminder of the couple's sacrifice and the ideals they represented. As weeks turned into months, the galaxy slowly began to stabilize. Communication networks were rebuilt, though on a smaller scale. Independent news outlets replaced state-controlled broadcasts, offering diverse perspectives instead of propaganda. Trade routes reopened, connecting communities separated for too long. Art and music flourished, celebrating themes of resilience and unity. Even science advanced as researchers collaborated across borders, freed from the empire's restrictive policies. Yet questions remained about what had caused the empire's sudden collapse. Scientists studied data logs, searching for patterns that might explain the widespread failures. Engineers examined remnants of imperial technology, hoping to uncover hidden flaws. Philosophers debated whether the event was natural or supernatural, accidental or intentional. None reached a definitive conclusion, but one theory gained traction: the idea that Jacob and Emily's sacrifice had acted as a catalyst, awakening latent forces within humanity itself. This notion resonated deeply with Rachel Monroe. She often visited the memorial at sunset, sitting quietly as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. Maybe it wasn't just technology or politics, she mused aloud one evening, tracing her fingers over the engraved names. Maybe it was us, all of us, waking up to the fact that we deserve better. That's what Jacob and Emily believed in. And maybe, just maybe, that belief was powerful enough to change everything. Her thoughts mirrored those of countless others grappling with the same question. Across the galaxy, people drew strength from the idea that collective action could reshape reality. Whether driven by love, hope, or sheer determination, humanity proved capable of extraordinary feats when united by a common purpose. In the absence of centralized authority, new forms of governance emerged. Some planets adopted rotating leadership roles, ensuring no single person held too much power. Others implemented councils where representatives from different communities made decisions together. Disagreements arose, of course, but compromises were reached more often than not. The process was messy and imperfect, but it reflected a fundamental shift: the recognition that power belonged to the people, not to rulers. Jacob and Emily's legacy continued to inspire these efforts. Statues of them appeared in cities across the galaxy, symbols of resistance and hope. Schools included their story in curriculums, teaching children about bravery and the importance of standing up for what's right. Songs written in their honor played on radios, blending poignant lyrics with uplifting melodies. Their names became synonymous with courage and compassion, qualities the galaxy desperately needed as it navigated uncharted territory. Even former Imperial officials grappled with their role in shaping the New World. Many fled into hiding, fearing retribution from those they had oppressed. Others sought redemption, offering skills and knowledge to help rebuild. A few publicly apologized, acknowledging the harm caused by the Empire's policies. While forgiveness didn't come easily, their willingness to confront the past signaled a step toward healing. Through it all, Rachel Monroe remained steadfast in her mission. She traveled beyond Zeta 7, speaking at gatherings and conferences about the importance of unity and cooperation. Her speeches weren't polished or rehearsed. They came straight from the heart, rooted in personal experience and conviction. People listened because she spoke not just as a leader, but as someone who had witnessed firsthand the cost of tyranny and the promise of freedom. By the time a year had passed since the Empire's collapse, the galaxy bore little resemblance to its former self. Challenges persisted, of course: scarce resources, lingering conflicts, and deep-seated inequalities. But progress was undeniable. Humanity had taken its first steps toward a brighter future, guided by the example set by two ordinary people who refused to stay silent. Jacob and Emily Carter may have been gone, but their spirit endured. In every act of kindness, every decision made with integrity, every effort to build a better world, they lived on. And as long as people remembered their story, the flame of hope they ignited would continue to burn brightly, lighting the way forward for generations to come. A year had passed since the fall of the Galactic Empire, and while the galaxy was still healing, signs of progress were everywhere. On Zeta 7, the small farming community that Jacob and Emily Carter once called home had transformed into a thriving hub of cooperation and innovation. The people who lived there no longer feared soldiers or oppressive taxes. Instead, they worked together to build something sustainable and fair. It wasn't perfect. There were disagreements and setbacks, but it was theirs. Rachel Monroe stood at the edge of a newly planted field, watching as volunteers worked side by side. The suns hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rows of young crops. She wiped sweat from her brow and smiled faintly. This land had been barren just months ago, neglected during the Empire's rule. Now, thanks to collective effort, it was alive with promise. Jacob and Emily would be proud, she murmured, to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of activity. The memory of the couple remained fresh in everyone's minds. Their names were spoken often, not just on Zeta 7, but across the galaxy. People shared stories about their courage, their love for each other, and their belief in a better future. These stories weren't just tales of the past. They served as blueprints for the present. Communities drew inspiration from them, using their example to guide decisions big and small. Rachel thought back to the early days after the Empire's collapse, when fear and uncertainty had gripped the galaxy. Planets had struggled to adapt, some falling into chaos while others found tentative stability. But even in those dark moments, hope had persisted. Rebels like Daniel had continued fighting, determined to ensure that the Empire's downfall didn't lead to another cycle of oppression. Farmers like those on Zeta 7 had focused on rebuilding, proving that resilience could overcome despair. Now, standing here surrounded by growth, both literal and metaphorical, Rachel felt a sense of pride. They hadn't solved every problem, but they were moving in the right direction, and that mattered. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place. Some planets embraced democratic systems, holding elections and establishing councils to represent diverse voices. Others adopted communal models, pooling resources and prioritizing equality. Schools reopened, teaching not only basic skills but also critical thinking and empathy. Art flourished, celebrating themes of unity and resistance. Music filled public spaces, blending traditional melodies with new rhythms born from collaboration. But challenges remained. Not all regions had recovered equally. War-torn planets struggled to rebuild, their populations displaced and traumatized. Factions still clashed over territory, resources, and ideology. Refugees wandered from world to world, searching for safety and opportunity. Corruption lingered in corners where power concentrated too heavily in individual hands. These issues weighed heavily on Rachel's mind, even as she celebrated the progress made so far. One evening, she gathered with neighbors around a fire outside the Carters' old home. The air was cool, and the stars above twinkled brightly. Someone had brought a guitar, and soft music drifted through the group as plates of food were passed around. Conversations ranged from lighthearted jokes to serious discussions about the road ahead. "We've come a long way," said an older man named Henry, leaning forward to add another log to the fire. His face was lined with age, but his eyes sparkled with determination. "But we can't stop now. There's still so much work to do." Rachel nodded in agreement. "You're right," she said, her tone thoughtful. "We've built something good here, but we need to keep pushing. The rest of the galaxy is counting on us to show what's possible." Her words sparked a lively debate. Some argued for expanding trade networks to help struggling planets. Others suggested forming alliances to address shared challenges like resource shortages and refugee crises. A young woman named Lily spoke up, her voice passionate. "What if we started sharing our story more widely? I mean, not just talking about Jacob and Emily, but showing how we've rebuilt here. Maybe it could inspire others to try new things." The idea resonated with the group. Over the next few weeks, they began documenting their efforts, writing articles, recording videos, and creating art that captured their journey. These materials were sent to neighboring planets, sparking conversations and collaborations. Slowly, Zeta 7 became known as a model for post-imperial recovery, a testament to what could be achieved when people work together. Meanwhile, Rachel traveled beyond her planet, speaking at gatherings and conferences. Her speeches were simple, yet powerful, focusing on practical steps communities could take to move forward. She emphasized the importance of listening to marginalized voices, addressing inequalities, and fostering trust. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she often said, "but every step counts. Every act of kindness matters. Together we can create something beautiful." Her message reached far and wide, resonating with people from all walks of life. Former imperial officials seeking redemption joined grassroots movements, offering expertise in areas like infrastructure and logistics. Scientists collaborated across borders, tackling problems like energy shortages and environmental damage. Artists created murals and sculptures depicting scenes of unity, reminding everyone of the strength found in diversity. Even former enemies found common ground. On one planet ravaged by conflict, leaders from opposing factions sat down together for the first time in years. Inspired by stories of cooperation from places like Zeta 7, they agreed to share resources and establish a joint council. It wasn't easy. Old wounds ran deep. But they recognized that continuing to fight would only prolong suffering. By working together, they began rebuilding their shattered world. Back on Zeta 7, Rachel reflected on these developments with cautious optimism. Progress was undeniable, but she knew better than to assume the hard work was over. Power dynamics shifted constantly, and vigilance was necessary to prevent new forms of oppression from taking root. Still, she allowed herself moments of gratitude for the resilience of humanity, for the courage of those who refused to give up, and for the enduring legacy of Jacob and Emily Carter. Their names continued to appear in conversations, headlines, and songs. Statues dedicated to them stood tall in cities across the galaxy, symbols of hope and defiance. Children learned about their sacrifice in schools, drawing pictures of them surrounded by stars. Couples named their newborns after them, ensuring their memory lived on through future generations. As Rachel walked through her community one morning, she noticed a group of children playing near the memorial plaque. They were laughing, their faces glowing with innocence and joy. One boy held up a stick, pretending it was a microphone. "And now," he announced dramatically, "we honor Jacob and Emily Carter, who showed us that love is stronger than hate." His friends cheered, clapping enthusiastically. Rachel couldn't help but smile. These kids understood the essence of the couple's legacy, not just their bravery, but their belief in a better future. That belief had ignited a spark that refused to be extinguished, guiding countless individuals toward a brighter tomorrow. By the end of the second year post-collapse, the galaxy had changed in profound ways. While scars remained, healing was underway. People came together not out of obligation but out of choice, because they believed in the possibility of something greater. Leaders emerged not from ambition, but from service. Decisions were made, not for profit but for the common good. Rachel returned to the memorial plaque one evening, sitting quietly as the twin suns dipped below the horizon. She traced her fingers over the engraved names, feeling a deep sense of connection. "Thank you," she whispered softly, "for everything." In that moment, she realized that Jacob and Emily's greatest gift wasn't just their sacrifice. It was the reminder that humanity, despite its flaws, was capable of extraordinary compassion and resilience. Their story proved that even in the darkest times, light could shine through. And as long as people remembered that truth, the galaxy would continue to heal, grow, and thrive. Years passed, and the galaxy continued to evolve. The memory of Jacob and Emily Carter remained alive, not just as a story from the past, but as a guiding light for the future. Their names were spoken in homes, classrooms, and council chambers across countless planets. Statues of them stood tall in public squares, surrounded by flowers and candles left by those who felt inspired by their courage. But more than monuments or memorials, it was their ideals, love, freedom, and unity, that shaped the new era. On Zeta 7, life had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. The small farming community, once overshadowed by imperial rule, now thrived as a model for sustainable living. Fields once barren under the Empire's neglect were lush with crops, nourished by cooperative efforts. Schools taught children about science, history, and ethics, emphasizing values like empathy and fairness. Art and music filled the streets, celebrating themes of resilience and hope. The Carters' old home had become a museum, its walls adorned with photographs, letters, and mementos donated by people whose lives they had touched. Rachel Monroe still played a central role in shaping this new world. Now older, her hair streaked with gray, she spent her days traveling between planets, sharing stories of Zeta 7's journey and offering guidance to communities working toward recovery. Her speeches were simple yet profound, focusing on practical steps rather than grand promises. "Change starts small," she often said. "It begins with kindness, with listening, with choosing to work together instead of apart." Her message resonated deeply, especially among younger generations. Children grew up hearing tales of Jacob and Emily's bravery, learning that even ordinary people could make extraordinary impacts. Teenagers joined volunteer groups, planting trees, building schools, and helping refugees settle into new lives. Elders shared wisdom passed down through generations, reminding everyone that progress required patience and perseverance. But Rachel never forgot the challenges faced along the way. She remembered the early days after the Empire's collapse, when fear and uncertainty gripped the galaxy. She recalled the conflicts, the struggles, and the moments when it seemed like everything might fall apart again. Those memories kept her grounded, reminding her that the road ahead would always require effort and vigilance. Across the galaxy, similar transformations unfolded. Planets embraced diverse forms of governance, experimenting with systems that prioritized equality and participation. Some adopted rotating leadership roles, ensuring no single person held too much power. Others formed councils where representatives from different communities made decisions collectively. Disagreements arose, of course, but compromises were reached, more often than not. The process was messy and imperfect, but it reflected a fundamental shift: the recognition that power belonged to the people, not to rulers. Even former imperial officials found ways to contribute. Many had fled into hiding during the initial chaos, fearing retribution for their roles in the Empire's atrocities. But over time, some sought redemption, using their skills to help rebuild. Engineers designed energy-efficient systems, doctors treated wounded refugees, and administrators helped organize food distribution networks. Public apologies weren't always accepted immediately, but sincere efforts to atone earned grudging respect, and sometimes forgiveness. The rebellion that had once fought against the Empire evolved into something greater, a coalition dedicated to fostering cooperation and justice. Daniel, the man who had first sought refuge with Jacob and Emily, became one of its leaders. He traveled between rebel camps, rallying fighters and coordinating strategies. His experiences had hardened him, but he carried the Carter's memory with him wherever he went. Their courage reminded him why they were fighting, not just to overthrow tyranny, but to create something better in its place. As decades passed, the galaxy entered a period of relative stability. Trade routes reopened, connecting distant worlds. Independent news outlets replaced state-controlled broadcasts, offering diverse perspectives instead of propaganda. Scientists collaborated across borders, advancing technology while prioritizing ethical considerations. Art flourished, blending traditional styles with innovative techniques born from collaboration. Music filled public spaces, blending melodies from different cultures into harmonies that celebrated unity. Yet questions about the Empire's sudden collapse lingered. Historians debated endlessly, analyzing data logs and testimonies in search of answers. Some argued that Jacob and Emily's sacrifice had awakened latent forces within humanity itself, a collective realization that love and freedom mattered more than fear. Others pointed to hidden rebel technology, suggesting the timing of the Empire's downfall was too precise to be coincidence. Still, others believed it was simply the inevitable result of an unsustainable system collapsing under its own weight. Regardless of the explanation, one truth remained undeniable. Jacob and Emily Carter had changed the course of history. Through their courage and love, they reminded the galaxy of something fundamental, that even in the darkest times, light could shine through. And though they were gone, their spirit endured, guiding countless individuals toward a brighter tomorrow. Rachel often reflected on this legacy during quiet moments. She visited the memorial plaque near Zeta 7's capital town frequently, sitting quietly as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. Maybe it wasn't just technology or politics, she mused aloud one evening, tracing her fingers over the engraved names. Maybe it was us, all of us, waking up to the fact that we deserve better. That's what Jacob and Emily believed in. And maybe, just maybe, that belief was powerful enough to change everything. Her thoughts mirrored those of countless others grappling with the same question. Across the galaxy, people drew strength from the idea that collective action could reshape reality. Whether driven by love, hope, or sheer determination, humanity proved capable of extraordinary feats when united by a common purpose. In the absence of centralized authority, new forms of governance emerged. Some planets adopted rotating leadership roles, ensuring no single person held too much power. Others implemented councils where representatives from different communities made decisions together. Disagreements arose, of course, but compromises were reached more often than not. The process was messy and imperfect, but it reflected a fundamental shift, the recognition that power belonged to the people, not to rulers. Jacob and Emily's legacy continued to inspire these efforts. Statues of them appeared in cities across the galaxy, symbols of resistance and hope. Schools included their story and curriculums, teaching children about bravery and the importance of standing up for what's right. Songs, written in their honor, played on radios, blending poignant lyrics with uplifting melodies. Their names became synonymous with courage and compassion, qualities the galaxy desperately needed as it navigated uncharted territory. Even former Imperial officials grappled with their role in shaping the New World. Many fled into hiding, fearing retribution from those they had oppressed. Others sought redemption, offering skills and knowledge to help rebuild. A few publicly apologized, acknowledging the harm caused by the Empire's policies. While forgiveness didn't come easily, their willingness to confront the past signaled a step toward healing. Through it all, Rachel Monroe remained steadfast in her mission. She traveled beyond Zeta 7, speaking at gatherings and conferences about the importance of unity and cooperation. Her speeches weren't polished or rehearsed. They came straight from the heart, rooted in personal experience and conviction. People listened because she spoke not just as a leader, but as someone who had witnessed firsthand the cost of tyranny and the promise of freedom. By the time a generation had grown up without knowing the Empire's rule, the galaxy bore little resemblance to its former self. Challenges persisted, of course, scarce resources, lingering conflicts, and deep-seated inequalities. But progress was undeniable. Humanity had taken its first steps toward a brighter future, guided by the example set by two ordinary people who refused to stay silent. Jacob and Emily Carter may have been gone, but their spirit endured. In every act of kindness, every decision made with integrity, every effort to build a better world, they lived on. And as long as people remembered their story, the flame of hope they ignited would continue to burn brightly, lighting the way forward for generations to come.